Okay, now to understand our Constitution, um, its real sense, okay, you have to understand the historical situation and environment in which it was elaborated. All right, so let's go back. Here's what happens: the kings of Europe did not want to lose their powers. All right, they don't want to share them with anybody, and so and King James, who's most representative of this of England, he went to the Bible. He said, well, look at the Bible. Look at King David, King Saul, King Solomon. God speaks to them. God sends the prophet to anoint them. He gives them the power, and he tells the people to obey them, and all that, all that business and everything else. But Saint Robert Bellarmine, who was a political theorist and wrote stuff on politics and all that, he was a philosopher and a theologian and everything, was a saint and a cardinal. He said to King James, listen, who asked for the king in the Bible were the people. See, the people came to the prophet and to God and said, we want a king. All right? So the authority of the king originally came from the people. It wasn't the king that went to God and said, I want to be a king here in the country. No. The people established a monarchy. They asked for it from the prophet and God and all that. So originally, the authority and whatever of the king came from the people, though then it was confirmed, to the king by God and all that. Okay, so and also in the gospel, Jesus says to Pilate, you would have no authority over me if it didn't come to you from on high, affirming that God is the author of all political power and authority in society. And he gives it to the people. And then the people elect whether they want a monarchy or democracy or whatever they want, So that's how it all started. Now, when Cardinal Bellarmine spoke these things, it was a sensation all over Europe. Locke, Jefferson, and all these people started working for democracies, to establish democracies in society. And so what happened was all these people, even the great philosopher of who was Rousseau, they were all God-fearing people. The writers of the Constitution, all that, they're all religious men, and they saw it as something normal, matter of fact, common thing to believe in a God. They saw it also something self-evident. They didn't have to go and write to say something about God because there was an atheistic society and they had to define these kind of things. No, it was already taken for granted. Okay, so but why did they specifically go to write something in the Constitution about separation of state and church and all that sort of business, and one religion taking over another and being recognized by the government? Because in those days, in that century, in the 17th century, you had Catholic states, you had Protestant states, you had Muslim states, and all. Now in Europe, what happened was, and these guys were hostile. If you're a Protestant going to the Catholic countries, you get killed. At the Council of Trent, the Protestants who took part in the council had to be escorted by armies because they were afraid to die. And if Catholics went to a Protestant country, they were beheaded, tortured, and all that sort of thing. Like I said, the only country that allowed religious freedom was Holland. All right, so the colonists said because they had a trauma of this, they said, okay, we will not recognize any religion, because if we do, we're going to get persecuted. These religions are going to kill us and all. And but we'll give freedom to everyone without recognizing, giving dominance to not one of them. But that did not mean that they did not recognize God. As the foundation, as the source of all political power and authority, which was just from right from biblical times. It's recognized as something in government. Okay, so this idea of atheism came around in the 19th century. All right, and I'll tell you about how that influenced government and all that. But now, so they did revolution and they took all this for granted, and that's why they made the separation of church and state and all. But what I want to say in the next video is to show the difference between the American Revolution and the French Revolution. Because the French Revolution that caused the new government in France was the initiator of the secular state. What initiated the state, the lay state that had no religion at all, And the difference between the the American government and the French government, because the French government they went with another idea of government. See, the other governments, they recognize God as the foundation, and He gave the authority to the people, and the people gave it to the representatives. But in the French Revolution, the French state, they came up with the idea of, yeah, we accept this idea of the people being the source of power and authority and all that, who give it to the representatives. But they separated the people from God. They just eliminated God and said, no, God doesn't give the authority to the people. He's not the source. The people are the source. And that caused a lot of confusion and created the lay state. But I'll explain that in this next video.